The moment she asked if she could sit there just for a minute, the world seemed to hold its breath, because people like her were usually invisible in places like this. The marble lobby gleamed with wealth and power, and every polished shoe that passed her felt like a reminder of what she had lost. She stood on one leg, trembling slightly, her crutches worn down from years of use, her courage thinner than the winter coat wrapped around her shoulders. No one noticed the quiet storm inside her, and no one expected what would happen next. If you believe that kindness still exists in this world, that second chances can rise from the most unexpected places, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so stories like this continue to reach hearts that need them. Her name was Grace Whitmore, and she had not always been the girl people avoided looking at. Years ago, she had run across schoolyards and danced barefoot in her parents' living room in Ohio, spinning until she collapsed in laughter. Faith was a word she learned early, taught by her mother who sang hymns while cooking dinner and believed God stitched purpose into every life, even when it hurt. That belief was tested the night a drunk driver crossed the center line on a rain-soaked highway outside Columbus. Grace survived. Her left leg did not. In the sterile white hospital room, where machines hummed like distant bees, her childhood ended quietly. What followed was a long season of pain, surgeries, and the slow realization that the world treated broken bodies differently. Grace tried to keep moving forward. She learned to balance, to fall and stand again, to smile when strangers stared too long. But resilience did not pay rent. Her father passed away 2 years after the accident, and her mother's health failed soon after. Bills piled up like silent accusations. Grace sold what little she had and eventually found herself drifting from shelter to shelter, her college dreams folded away like an old photograph. She believed in God, but some nights she wondered if God believed in her. On that cold morning in New York City, Grace found herself inside the towering headquarters of a financial empire, not because she belonged there, but because the security guard had allowed her a few minutes to warm up. Outside, snow fell like ash, and her body ached from standing all night near a subway entrance, asking for help from people who pretended not to hear. Inside, warmth wrapped around her like a forgotten memory. She saw a long leather bench near the elevators and felt dizzy with exhaustion. Asking to sit felt like asking for permission to exist. The man she approached was sitting alone, scrolling through reports on a tablet, his tailored suit sharp against the soft glow of the lobby lights. His name was Jonathan Reed, though the world knew him by titles instead. CEO. Visionary. Billionaire. He had built his empire from nothing, or so the headline said, but few knew about the quiet grief he carried. Years earlier, Jonathan had lost his wife, Hannah, to cancer. She had been gentle, deeply faithful, and endlessly compassionate. She used to tell him that success meant nothing if it didn't lift others. Since her death, Jonathan had buried himself in work, building walls of productivity around a heart that still ached. Grace's request reached him not as words, but as a feeling. He looked up and saw not a beggar, not a burden, but a young woman fighting to stay upright in a world that refused to slow down. He noticed her eyes first, clear and steady despite everything, holding a quiet dignity that reminded him painfully of Hannah. In that moment, something softened inside him. He offered her the seat without hesitation, and as she lowered herself carefully, relief washed over her face like sunlight breaking through clouds. As Grace sat there, she felt something unfamiliar, safety. Not pity. Not judgment. Just space to breathe. Jonathan observed her from the corner of his eye, noticing the way she folded her hands in her lap, the way she kept her back straight as if refusing to let life bend her any further. He felt compelled to speak, not as a CEO, but as a human being who had known loss. He told her, gently, that she was beautiful, not in the way magazines define beauty, but in the way broken things that keep shining always are. Grace felt tears sting her eyes. Compliments had become rare, and sincerity rarer still. They talked without urgency, sharing pieces of their lives in the quiet lobby as employees hurried past, unaware that something sacred was unfolding. Grace spoke of her faith, of how she still believed God had a plan even when she couldn't see it. Jonathan listened, truly listened, and for the first time in years, he felt his wife's presence not as pain, but as guidance. He saw in Grace a reflection of the compassion Hannah had lived by. That morning changed everything. Jonathan arranged for Grace to receive medical care, a proper prosthetic, and a safe place to live. But more than that, he offered her purpose. Grace had always loved numbers and organization, skills she had learned helping her father with his small business. Jonathan invited her to join a nonprofit arm of his company, focused on creating opportunities for people with disabilities. Grace hesitated, fear whispering that she wasn't enough, but faith urged her forward. The months that followed were not easy. Learning to walk confidently with a prosthetic tested her patience and strength. Stepping into an office environment again stirred insecurities she thought she had buried. But Grace worked harder than anyone, fueled by gratitude and a quiet determination to honor the chance she had been given. Jonathan watched her grow, her confidence blooming like spring after a brutal winter. She reminded him daily that resilience was a form of worship, and that kindness, once given, had a way of multiplying. Grace's story began to ripple outward. The nonprofit expanded, offering jobs, training, and hope to people society had sidelined. Grace stood at the center of it, not as a symbol of pity, but as a testament to perseverance. She shared her journey openly, never hiding her scars, believing that transparency was how light entered dark places. Her faith deepened, not because life became perfect, but because she saw how broken paths could still lead somewhere beautiful. Years later, Grace returned to that same lobby, now walking with confidence, her head held high. She sat on the same bench, remembering the girl she had been, cold and unseen, and whispered a prayer of thanks. Jonathan joined her, older now, gentler, his success measured less by profits and more by lives changed. They shared a quiet moment, understanding that miracles rarely arrive with thunder. Sometimes they come disguised as permission to sit down and rest. As this story draws close, if Grace's journey stirred something inside you, if it reminded you that compassion can change destinies and that faith can survive even the hardest losses, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement helps stories like this reach hearts that may be standing alone, afraid to ask for a place to sit.